First of all, thank you so much for this opportunity, for having me here as a contributor. Just yesterday I touched some points concerning the Russian engagement in the Nagorno-Karabakh conflict resolution, and now maybe I'm going to do it in a more detailed way. First of all, let me note that South Caucasus has, and security situation in this region has a particular influence for Russia, because Russia is also the Caucasian country, like Armenia, Azerbaijan, and Georgia. It's not a beautiful metaphor. Russia has 7 constituencies in North Caucasus, and the territory of the Russian North Caucasus is bigger than territory of all newly independent countries of South Caucasus, be it internationally recognized or de facto entities. Of course, you can say Russia is also a Far Eastern country, European country, multi-regional country, as Vladimir Putin noted for his recent interview to German edition Bild. Yes, of course, our country is huge, but the Caucasian dimension is very important because many conflicts taking place in the southern part of the Greater Caucasus has a direct impact on the ethnopolitical dynamics in Russia. And many conflicts are connected between each other, like Ossetia and Ingush with Georgian Ossetian situation in Abkhazia, with Circassian constituency in Russia. And Nagorno-Karabakh conflict also provoked waves of migrants to southern regions of Russia and provoked some hostilities, especially in Stavropol region, Krasnodar region, and so on. The second point, it would be closer to the topic of Nagorno-Karabakh also. Russia has 2 numerous diasporas. We have the most numerous Armenian diaspora in the world, and the second Azerbaijani diaspora after Iran. Both of them are very active, and representatives of those diasporas are engaged in business activity, lobbyist activities, and so on and so on. And many representatives of the 2 communities held influential position in business and even highest rank of Russian elite. It's also a very important factor. And third point, after 5 days war being lost its influence in Georgia, Russia is interested to keep its presence and influence both in Armenia and Azerbaijan. Situation in this conflict is very different from other conflicts in the post-Soviet space. As for conflicts in the post-Soviet space, I wish to repeat my yesterday thesis that Russia, before 2000, first of all, very important, Russian position to those conflicts was not eternal or primordial. It changed. It changed due to different circumstances. I can name 3 basic sets of those circumstances influencing on the change of the Russian position. First point, situation inside Russia. Russia faced separatist challenge, especially in Tatarstan and Chechnya, was rather cautious in communicating with the neighbors and very cautious to any supports of separatist movements outside of Russia. I wish to remind you that Russia, together with Georgia, organized blockade of Abkhazia in 1996, January. It was position of Russia also. The second point, relationship between Russia and newly independent countries. When those relationships were more or less friendly, of course, in Russian point of view, Russia didn't try to change them. If they changed due to different dynamics and so on, Russia changed or tried to revise previous approach. Thus, Russian position to Georgia, for example, changed in 1999. The relationship between Russia and Azerbaijan also changed seriously, because before 2001, not Georgia, but Azerbaijan was troublemaking country #1 in Russia, for Russia. I wish to remind you that Boris Yeltsin, first president of Russia, never visited Azerbaijan with official visits. First time after the collapse of the USSR, he visited this country only in 2005. It was private visit, not state visit. The first visit paid to Azerbaijan was a visit of Vladimir Putin in 2001. It changed seriously the dynamics in relationship between 2 countries. This is why position of Russia, I'm repeating once again, was not primordial or eternal. And third factor of relationship between Russia and the West, the wider geopolitical context, because before early 2000s, the West was not so active in the post-Soviet space in general and in the Caucasus in particular. Maybe we can remember some economic interests like century contract in Azerbaijan in 1994, but it was not a serious engagement because before the early 2000s, the West, European Union and United States were engaged in the Balkans. They paid practically all attention to this area. As for the Caucasus, Central Asia, Ukraine even, they were treated like more or less territory of Russian influence and Russian control. It was not officially recognized, but semi-recognized. Since 2003, situation changed. I see the failure of so-called Dmitry Kozak memorandum in Transnistria and resolution was kind of watershed when the West sent a signal that post-Soviet space became an arena of competitive interests. It's not exclusive domain of Russia. Then Rose Revolution, then Orange Revolution, and the West demonstrated its readiness to cooperate directly with newly independent countries with no role of Russia like mediator, like moderator, like guarantor of security and conflict resolution in this area. Since those times, the Western-Russian competitive cooperation or cooperative competition has influenced greatly on the relationship between Russia and newly independent countries or post-Soviet countries. Three factors influencing the Russian approach. As for Nagorno-Karabakh, it's different from other approaches. Because before 2008, a Russian approach to all ethnopolitical conflicts based on principles of status quo. For Russia, keeping of status quo was the best option. I wish to pay special attention to situation in Abkhazia and South Ossetia because in spite of dozens of requests of separatists to be recognized, Russia ignored them. One interesting detail, in 1992, North Ossetia, you know, there is a constituency inside Russia. North Ossetia recognized independence of South Ossetia. In 2000, Vladimir Putin came to power and began fixing regional legislation, excluding some points which contradicted to the all-Russian legislation. And he personally fixed the point concerning the recognition of South Ossetia by North Ossetia. This point was excluded from the original legislation of North Ossetia. This is why there were no, how to say, primordial approach to increase territories and so on and so on. In 2008, situation changed and Russia rejected the universal approach to all conflicts. Since that time, Russian approach became not universal. It became more or less situative, depending on three basic factors described by me some minutes ago. And currently, Russia has three basic approaches, or combination of those approaches to the resolution of conflicts. Russia recognized independence of Abkhazia and South Ossetia in 2008, and currently we see two parallel realities. Their paths are not crossing. For United States, for some European countries, there are occupied territories of Georgia. For example, for Romania, Lithuania, some international organizations. As for most of European countries, no occupation, but there is a territorial integrity of Georgia. Georgia is a territorial integral country. For example, Germany or France didn't say something about occupation, but they say about territorial integrity. They confirmed this approach. As for Russia, there are two independent countries with embassies and all arsenals confirming their separate existence without Georgian jurisdictions and so on. The second point concerns Transnistria. Russia supports territorial integrity of Moldova. Moreover, Russia, due to statements of highest officials of Ministry of Foreign Affairs, portrayed a corridor of opportunities. Sergey Lavrov said that if Moldova will reconsider its status like neutral country, or maybe it would be part of Romania, Russia in this situation will have a chance to reconsider its approach to Transnistria. If no, okay, status quo. Because in many cases, Russian approach is portrayed in the post-Soviet space like one-way ticket. Russia wants this, Russia does that, but excuse me, it's tango of two dancing persons. It's not one-way ticket. Because Russia wants this, but Georgia wants that, Armenia wants that, Azerbaijan that, the West that, and so on and so on. It's kind of global world, by the way, where not only a Russian evil will or goodwill exists. The next point, Nagorno-Karabakh. In the Nagorno-Karabakh conflict, Russia is not opposing the West, like in the case in Abkhazia and South Ossetia. In South Ossetia, Abkhazia, we have a competition, even rivalry, of two approaches. In the case of Nagorno-Karabakh, no. Russia doesn't recognize independence of Nagorno-Karabakh Republic. It's not even mentioned in all official documents of Russian Federation. For all electoral campaigns in Nagorno-Karabakh, Russia states that it's a part of Azerbaijan. In the case of Abkhazia, South Ossetia, Russia supports elections. It's engaged in some political fighting in those entities and so on. In the case of Nagorno-Karabakh, no. It's not the arena of competition between the West and Russia. Of course, there are many nuances in this situation because Russia searches a resolution, but de facto, it's status quo power in this situation. Because status quo is a very interesting option to be discussed because many scholars, especially in the West, blame status quo. Status quo is not resolution. Status quo is so poor option. Great, of course, I can agree, but with some nuances. If the two sides are ready to make compromises, yes, status quo is the worst case. If no, because the real alternative is not a choice between status quo and peaceful resolution. War and status quo is also option, is also alternative. And denying of it looks like a Hippocratic approach. There is such option. It's necessary to understand the situation, this choice. And Russian officials don't believe in very fast evolution of the positive evolution, of course, of this conflict because they observe growth of hostilities not only along the contact line or front line in Nagorno-Karabakh itself, but along the Azerbaijani-Armenian border. In the case of Nagorno-Karabakh, Russian officials could say, sorry, Nagorno-Karabakh is a territory of Azerbaijan. We recognize territorial integrity of this country, and this country, of course, has a right to restore its territorial integrity. Okay, we can be neutral. Now I'm discussing hypothetical development of this situation. If Azerbaijan will decide tomorrow to revenge in the Nagorno-Karabakh, Russia can say, okay, it's territory of Azerbaijan, yes. We are a friendly country, we are friends of Armenians and Azerbaijan, but it's domestic deal of Azerbaijan. But another story, Armenian-Azerbaijani border, which is internationally recognized. Armenia is a part of CSTO, Collective Security Treaty Organization, as well as Russia, and Russia in this situation should react and to make a choice between strategic ally and strategic partner. Yesterday I told you about small differences, tiny differences between two categories. This choice is not so well. The other point, Russia, it's absolutely true. Russia will face problems inside CSTO because Kazakhstan has its own approach, it has its own economic agenda with Azerbaijan, for example, the same with Tajikistan. And I'm not sure that countries of CSTO will be united around Russia supporting Armenia and Armenian security in this situation. The same is with Eurasian Economic Union. In this situation, Russia will have crisis into integration projects supported by it. Is it interesting for Russia? Of course, no. It's necessary to understand. Russia is not interested to have more problems with allies, with partners, with the integration projects. This is why for Russia, more or less, keeping of status quo is better. Because unlike United States, Russia is not thinking about the change of human nature or so on and so on. It thinks first and foremost about very concrete things, not like abstract values. Democracy in Azerbaijan, democracy in Syria, democracy in everywhere. It looks like desire of USSR to promote communism everywhere in Angola, in Mozambique, and so on, practically the same. I spent more than 3 years in the United States. Sometimes it seemed to me I appeared in the Soviet Union with the courses of scientific communism and so on. Believe that democracy will fix every problems in every point of the world, with no taking into account some particularities and so on and so on. For Russia, this approach is not so well, because Russia itself suffered from this universal approach, ignoring some nuances, details, particularities, and so on and so on. And we a little bit learned lessons from the collapse of the USSR and failure of the communist experiment in our country. This is why we have some nuances. For United States, officially status quo is not tolerable. It's repeated from time to time. But de facto, United States are not also interested to break the status quo, because in reality they have no qualitative alternatives to updated Madrid principles. The same is with the EU. Some of my colleagues today said that Russia was active, EU maybe is not so active, but it's not a problem of Russia, of course. Because till nowadays, European Union has not demonstrated any serious desire to be engaged in the Nagorno-Karabakh conflict resolution. Maybe France, yeah, which is kind of delegate of the European Union in OSCE Minsk group, but not European Union in general. This is not top priority of EU. This is why for Russia, situation of status quo is understood not like kind of universal drug, but maybe less evil in this situation. I understand that this position is maybe looking like a little bit cynical, but in my mind it's more realistic, because for Russia it's impossible to cure spirits of Armenian and Azerbaijan, transform nature of people and so on, and change the nature of newly independent countries. Balance of forces, balances of power is a basic interest of this country, of my country. This is why maybe it's time for me to stop, and I hope we will have time for question answers, because in brief observation for 20 minutes it's impossible to raise all questions concerning Russian approach in the post-Soviet space, in the conflict resolution, and balancing very complicated balancing between revisionism and status quo. Now I am open for your questions, notes, and comments. Thank you for your attention. I see Stepan is ready.
Thank you, Sergey. I have two short questions. What do you think, why official Russia, no, I speak about official position Russia's, recognizes territorial integrity of Azerbaijan, but don't recognize Georgia? And second, your view, official view I know, but your view, what was in Crimea? Self-determination process, occupation, your view, what is?
Okay, thank you. Now it's time to answer, or we will now, okay. Of course, let me confirm once again, I'm not official. This is why I'm more or less flexible. Yes, Russia has not recognized independence of Nagorno-Karabakh because Russia is not interested to transform Azerbaijan to the second Georgia. It's not interest of Russia because, of course, we value our state, values our cooperation with Armenia, but we share the common border with Azerbaijan. It's the Dagestani part of the border. It's very important because you know that since 2005, Dagestan has held so-called first rate in so-called terrorist competition in the Caucasus. It's the most dangerous, most vulnerable republic for Russia in terms of security. It's the place with the most active Islamist forces not only in the Caucasus, but in the post-Soviet space in general. And of course, Azerbaijan also concerns about the situation. I understand that Azerbaijan faces multiple Islamist challenges in the southern part of this country, Islamist group relating to Iran, in the northern part of Azerbaijan, like Kuba, Kusari forces or Islamist forces relating to Dagestan, but it's total concern, common concern of the two countries, and so on. Why Russia recognized the independence of Abkhazia and South Ossetia? It's necessary also to understand that it was not a surprise. Putin woke up on the 26th of August and say, oh, okay, we will recognize independence of Abkhazia and South Ossetia. Russian behavior is estimated in many aspects, especially in the West, like irrational. But it's necessary to pay more attention to details, not like cliches. Russia like bear who wants to capture territories and so on and so on. We had 4 years of unfreezing of the conflict in South Ossetia and 2 years in Abkhazia. I wish to remind you that due to Dagamys Agreement signed in 1992, there were 12 years of peaceful development in South Ossetia. Economic cooperation between de facto state and Georgia, human ties and so on. Desire of Saakashvili to accelerate the process of revenge or restore territorial integrity provoked conflict. And first bloody clashes took place after 12 years break in 2004. I suppose that events of 2004 played more significant role than events of 2008 because they were consequences of events of 2004. The first break, first violation of status quo, which was invisible for the West, absolutely. As a result, recognition of Abkhazia and South Ossetia, it was a suspended decision. It was not decision immediate, regardless of clashes of 2004 and so on. This is why if Azerbaijan will break any status quo, will provide non-friendly policy to Russia, maybe Russian position will be changed, who knows. But currently Azerbaijan is trying to balance, because Azerbaijan has many limits to be pro-Western country, like Georgia, in terms of problems of human rights and so on. And of course I am critical to this point of the Azerbaijani official governmental policy, but I understand many problems with shaping of national identity, with absence of effective opposition, because opposition in Azerbaijan waged a war on two fronts, against government and against each other. It's a problem, because many leaders of opposition discredited themselves, and no belief to them. It's not only connected with the administrative resource of this country. Nevertheless, many things will be dependent also on Azerbaijani approach to Russia and so on. As for Crimea and case of change of its status, was it annexation or no? I told yesterday that there are two approaches to the considering of this problem. A narrow normative, according to it, of course it was annexation because it was violating of agreements, interstate borders, supported and recognized by Russia, first of all. But I'm not a lawyer, I'm a historian. I understand that treaties, agreements change from time to time, because otherwise we can live in accordance with Westphalian system till nowadays with no changes. It would be harmony and so on. I understand that problem of Crimea is not only a violation of some formal judicial norms, it was also a question of identity. In my mind, the crisis of Ukraine was provoked by unconstitutional overthrow of the government and Yanukovych, who was legally elected. And his party obtained majority in parliamentary elections of 2012. He was overthrown with no impeachment procedure, and so on and so on. This crisis provoked different opinions and clashes in different sides of Ukraine. It's strange for me that revolutionary activity of Maidan and captures of administrations in the western and central parts of Ukraine were blessed by the West. It was a revolutionary activity, anti-corruption and so on. The same techniques used in Crimea and Donbass were judged. The same technique, captures of administration, slogans, but pro-Russian. Yes, because this country has different opinions and had different opinions Yes, in the squares in Kiev, maybe 1 million people were gathered, but the population of this country at that time was 45 million. 1 million didn't reflect opinions of the whole Ukraine. Ukraine is not Maidan, by the way. It's a little bit more complicated. This is why it's a combination of normative violations and questions of identity choice. By the way, 2/3 of Ukrainian troops deployed in Peninsula, 2/3, including Commander-in-Chief of Ukrainian Navy, changed their loyalty. Now many of them are serving in the Russian army. It's also a case for studying why people who made obligations before their state maybe didn't want to defend the state. Why? Is it a problem of Putin or a little bit wider context? I'm sure the second point. Yes, yes, I understand the logics, and now we can make the second step. Russia is responsible for military growth and militarization of this region, but excuse me, this militarization and military growth started before Russia made contracts with Azerbaijan in 2010. This militarization took place before, and Azerbaijan addressed for military supplies to Israel, and we discussed intensively the contract between Leumi company of Israel and Azerbaijan, but we didn't blame Israel for its contribution to the militarization of the region. We should first of all understand that desire to militarize is first, and then addressee is the second. Russia, maybe Israel, maybe South Africa, maybe. Azerbaijani leaders discussed a couple of years ago their problems of promotion and development of proper military industrial complex of Azerbaijan. There was a very interesting discussion. As for growth of military resources and arsenal, maybe I will sound cynical, at least. I'm realist. I'm not, in my approach to international agenda, I'm realist, I'm not liberal or idealist. I see that this growth could also attribute to stabilization. Compare this situation with Cold War, when two centers of global power, United States and Russia, were engaged in the arms raising. Yes, it was very serious threat and challenge. At the same time, this raising played a stabilizing role, because every side was afraid to attack another one. The same situation, inshallah, and God with us, we have conventional arms raising, not nuclear. But this conventional arms raising also can play stabilizing role in this situation. Not resolution, but stabilization of this situation. It's also ambiguous. And don't consider Russia like exclusive how to say, disturbing force in this situation. First and foremost, we need to understand that it's ethno-political, not ethnic conflict, because yesterday some people said, what's the problem? Azeris and Armenians coexist, live together peacefully in Georgia, in Moscow, even they are engaged in trading, business. Yes, of course, because they are not discussing politically the problem of Nagorno-Karabakh, of course. I can also be good friend with my good colleague Mitat Chelikpala. Yesterday some people admired how Russian and Turk could discuss something. No problem, because we are not Putin and Erdogan. No problem for us to discuss our cooperation, to discuss our articles, maybe common projects in the future, no problem. But politically, if we can imagine tomorrow I will be president of Russia and Mitat president of Turkey, of course we would confront a little bit on situation around Syria or Crimea and so on and so on and so on, because it was another area, political responsibility. We have deal with ethno-political conflict. And the role of Russia, the role of United States are their background factors, not basic. Countries can address to United States, to Russia, to Iran, to help. They are searching the maybe prerogatives or additional factors, how to change the situation, how to change the swing policy. Yes, we can ask United States, no support. Okay, this is why United States is not so good power. Russia can support a little bit, okay, yes, but nothing personal, just business. And even Armenia, even who is strategic ally of Russia, can be critical to some Russian approaches. For Armenia, our final choice in favor of this country would be great, but for Russia, we don't want to see Azerbaijan like a second Georgia, for example. Every country has its own vision of the situation, benefits, losses, and so on. Nothing new. Okay, last on the list. Yeah, it's very important to listen to Margarita.
Just a question, there are also Russian-speaking and ethnically Russian communities, minorities, sometimes even vast minorities in Baltic states, in Belarus, elsewhere.
One of my beloved questions.
If they desire to also become independent, so in a parallel way that it almost happened in Ukraine, not necessarily because of change in power in Latvia, Lithuania, or Estonia, but in some other reason, they may feel endangered living, in a democratic society. Would it be, again, okay to support and make sure that their independence is guaranteed?
Okay, great question, and it's very easy for me to answer. But
do you want to add?
I have a comment, so that
Okay.
First of all, the problem of Crimea was resolved, or maybe Russian tried to resolve it in very concrete historical context. I'm a historian. This is why I pay more attention to concrete context. As for Baltic countries, do we have any political parties of Russians who are really in favor of secession from Latvia or Estonia? No. Maybe tomorrow, let's discuss tomorrow. But yeah, now we have what we have. We have no political slogans, mottos in Latvia, Estonia, real mottos for secession, for reunification with Mother Russia. Okay, mayor of Riga is ethnic Russian, Nil Ushakov. He recognized the fact of occupation of Latvia by Soviet troops. What's the problem? He is Russian. It's kind of also hypocrisy at the West, because those guys blame Putin for fifth column term and so on. But when Baltic leaders blame Russian people, rank-and-file Russians, like potential fifth column, what is this? It's Stalinism, by the way. Stalinism is not a know-how of Russia also. It's Stalinist approach. Collective responsibility. Different Russians, many of them are very happy to be part of European Union countries with passport of European Union member country. Many of them are politically active. Centrist party in Estonia. Most of its members are Russians. What problem with them? As for Kazakhstan, also we have no concrete territorial claims or disputes between those countries. We don't see any demands, but we discuss maybe tomorrow, let's see this problem tomorrow. One of my good friends and colleagues, Andreas Umland, a German scholar who stays now in Ukraine, in 2008 proposed to discuss the fate of Kaliningrad and its future perspectives. Great. Tskhinvali was shot in the period of 1991 till 2008 3 times, was assaulted 3 times. We didn't face such situations in Kaliningrad. There was not request of people who are mostly pensioners and militaries to secede from Russia to be part of Germany. Let's discuss concrete things, not artificial. Case of Kaliningrad, case of Siberia, 3 people who occupy one sofa maybe discuss situation of Siberian separatism, but it's not politically actual issue. As for Russian approach in the post-Soviet space, it's absolutely not based on defense of only ethnic Russians. For example, in Abkhazia, Russian compose about 12% of the population. In South Ossetia, 0%, but at the same time in Nagorno-Karabakh also. As far as I know, now in Nagorno-Karabakh only about 100 Russians. wives of some Armenians leave. But at the same time, Russia is active in this process. It's not about ethnic Russians. Until 2014, Russia was not so active supporting pro-Russian movements in Crimea. By the way, the case of Crimea secession discussed, and I can remember the case of 1994 when electoral bloc Russia won elections in Crimea and practically predicted scenarios of 2014. But those times, Russia and Ukraine managed to resolve the situation because not only Russia, but Kyiv also wanted to resolve the situation, not to use it like an instrument to consolidate the central power. This is why, please, speaking about those conflicts, let's discuss not only Russian imperial will, but problems of nation building in newly independent countries. If we are discussing territorial integral Georgia, of course, we should speak about, of course, I can agree, Georgia is a territorially integral country, but Abkhazian people are not interested to be part of NATO. This is why let's discuss different geopolitical choices in this country. The same is with Moldova. If it's territorial integral, okay. Why voice of Chisinau is better, is more important than voice of Transnistria? Why? We are discussing what kind of Europe? Europe of 30s of previous century? Or people who are pro-American are better than people who are not pro-American? It's not a good option, by the way.
It's really a comment, and actually we can discuss it later also. But I wanted to reflect to what you mentioned about like similar approach, propagandistic communism ideas and democracy ideas. So earlier you mentioned it. And just I wanted to reflect that I see the big difference. I don't see it like it's even similar, because the model that the West or the USA or the West propagates liberal democracy. It's really a model, because it was employed, it was implemented, and there were results. So it's, but the model of communism was never actually implemented because it was not what was implemented in Soviet Union. It was not model of communism. It was something different. There are different names, and maybe still we don't have. But it never was implemented to be propagated at first. Also, you said that Russia tried democracy and didn't work for it. So maybe it works not for everybody. It never tried, because the West tried. And with all the problems, but we have a result, we can see them. But Russia never tried democracy. It was only conversation about it. Also, one more point, and I finish. The difference, that when we talk about liberal democracy, with all the problems that definitely the model has, but what is declared by the model and is supported by people, really. So they talk about it in their kitchens, but the model that was employed in Soviet Union was different. So what was discussed or propagated on official level, and what we discussed, because I am from Soviet Union as well,
Me too.
in our kitchens, it was completely different, completely. So it's also the big difference between two models. I would not compare them. It was just a reflection.